Hi, everybody. I'm Darren Bain. I'm one of the co-founders at RightCrowd. We're a physical identity access management. PIAM is kind of the acronym they use. Software vendor. Been around since 2004. We've delivered lots of solutions successfully to large organizations where there are lots of humans. Um, and they need automation around physical access. Now, some of those have included higher education facilities, and they obviously have a lot of new humans that join them every semester, and they have a lot of moving pieces. I'll be moderating today's session, and we're going to be delving into when security collides with campus culture. It's really about how zero trust principles can be applied on a university campus with the least amount of friction. And that's really for the end users. And they're typically students who are pretty much not really focusing very much on security. So it's really about making sure it's a good experience for them as well. I got two people joining me today on the webinar, and they know a lot more about higher education than I do from their experience. So we're going to be learning a lot from them today. So the guests today are Paul Sinise from Secured and Prepared Consulting and Jason Bryan from Alcatraz. Paul is one of the founders and the principal of Secured and Prepared Consulting. He has over 35 years of security leadership. We've all got lots of years, Paul. I'm right there with you. Paul's been recognized globally for his contributions over the years, including being named a top 40 global thought leader by the Life Safety Alliance. He's a past president of the International Association for Healthcare Security and Safety, and he's also a certified CPTED specialist. He brings a deep expertise in creating safe, open environments, and he's also authored dozens of articles around that, spoken internationally. And today he'll share how the principles of zero trust can be applied to higher education. The other guest, Jason Bryan from Alcatraz, he's been here around 25 years. We've all got plenty of years and decades in this industry. The first half of that was as a systems integrator on the technical side, and he was really delivering large integrated solutions for the corrections industry of all places. And then the second half of that career has really been on the manufacturer side, and he's had experience in multiple biometrics companies as well as video and access control. He's been with Alcatraz for around 4 years and has a dedicated focus around higher education vertical, having sold it to many of the universities across the US. And as he said to me in one of the intros, he said, "For my career, I've been in and out of a lot of jails." So not something we can all say, and say with the confidence that he was able to say it to me with, not something I want to be able to claim. As I say, you'll be hearing mostly from them today, and we'll certainly be going through a range of questions. But I just want to give you a little background story that will provide a bit of context here. Really, from my experience, and I went to university in Australia at the University of Queensland. They have it's a beautiful campus on the university, and my American wife was a little dubious when I first took her there. And I was there in the 80s, which is a long time ago. And in those days, you could walk into the physics building, I did astrophysics for a while. It turned out to be quite hard. But in the front of that lobby in the physics building, they have what's called the pitch drop experiment. It's actually in the Guinness Book of World Records, the longest running lab experiment in the world. And it's actually, it's some pitch sitting in like a vial or a jar or whatever. And it's showing that even with how tar, as you would call it, it seems like a very solid thing we drive on the roads and so forth, that it would have fluidity and viscosity and that it would actually drip. And so that in 1927, they set this experiment up, and over the years, it's actually dripped 9 times over all of those years. I was actually fortunate enough that one of the years, I wasn't standing there watching it at the time, but it did drip during my tenure at the university. So that was a pretty exciting time. But the point of my story is really, this is a world famous experiment. And even not so many years ago, when I went there with my American wife, we walked into the physics building. We could still get to that experiment. But what I found, to my dismay, because I wanted to show the rest of the building, was that it was all locked down now. There was, access control. There was all kinds of barriers to me being able to show where my first lecture theatre was and things like that. I can tell you in the 80s, there was none of that at all. And my student card was literally a card. And that was all I had. So things have come a long way since then. And that's really what we're going to talk about now, is that, the collision of all of these requirements and compliance and all the other safety aspects that we have to apply on today's campuses versus what we had back then. But how do we still make the experience a great one? So let's dive into the actual experts discussion here. So really, I just want to run a bunch of questions by you guys, Jason and Paul. And so the first question, it's the general context question, and I'd probably, Paul, ask you here as your experience consulting to these types of organizations, what is it really that makes a university environment so different from, other types of facilities when it comes to security?
Great question. Well, at first, it starts with the environment. So, a lot of universities are in large cities. Some of them are in towns. It's very rare that you find a campus that is a secured perimeter campus. Typically, they're pretty wide open campuses. I was just at the California a couple of weeks ago. It was a 499 square acre campus. It's a big
Okay.
campus, which
Mm,
literally encompassed the town as well. So,
mm.
that the environment certainly makes universities very unique. But then you got to think about just the turnover and the volume of people that are on the campus, right? So you have your students, you have your faculty, you have your visitors, you have contractors, you have this multitude of different um, entities that have to access the university. So just managing that diverse population is a challenge. And then you think about the universities. We talked about the experiment with the drip. I mean, I was in a facility not too long ago. They had antiquities from Greece and Rome that
Yeah.
there was the most secure facility, most secure space in the whole entire university because it had
Yeah.
those antiquities. But you think about, some of the medical testing that goes on, some of the research that goes on, some of the very top secret um, studies and
Mm.
research that's going on at these universities. So you have not only very diverse populations, you also have multiple levels of access needs because of kind of the sensitivity of these things. So, it's always a challenge for universities. So how do you strike that balance, right, between openness and very open culture and being easily accessible to the public and the students, but also being secure. So it's universities are very unique in that sense that it's just very unique populations and very unique security risk within the campuses themselves.
Yeah, I totally
Darren,
agree. And yeah, Jason. Yeah.
yeah, I just kind of wanted to touch on what Paul said there. I always feel like I'm going down multiple paths as well. So you've got different different departments, right? You've got housing, you've got athletics, you've got mentioned labs and research type areas and dining, and they all have this unique grasp on what security means to them. Where housing, it's hey, I only want authorized people in here. Dining, they're all about speed, right, and proper authorization, getting rid of buddy punching and those types of things. And then athletics, they don't want a card, they don't want a phone, right? They want something fast and easy. And of course, with labs, it's how do we lock these down with many forms of authentication. So I feel like it's a very layered approach, but I think it's fun.
Yeah, look, and to contrast those two responses, I mean, you layer what you just said there with the athletics department with a nuclear facility or a top secret area or something like that. I mean, these are two groups that shouldn't ever mix. They shouldn't, it's oil and water
Yeah.
basically. So, yeah, it's certainly challenging. And we spoke previously around the revolving door issue, the number of people coming in and out. How do you see that really impacting the situations that they're trying to deal with?
Well, it's huge because there's just constant churn. I mean, if you think about it, every year you've got almost a quarter of the population coming in and then another
Mm,
quarter going out. So
mm,
that piece is a full-time job. Back on athletics, there's always transfers happening, right? Especially with all
mm.
the portal piece. So
Yeah.
that's when finding technology that can help streamline and automate that whole process. And for us, it's being up more on the biometric side. It's we got to get people enrolled in a simplistic fashion. So I
Right.
think that's the piece where the rubber really hits the road, and you got to make sure we're not putting all of these arduous tasks on the people that have to admin all of those departments.
Because they won't do it.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
bottom line. These are students. These are, when's the next college football game or the basketball game or whatever's going on? It's nothing to do with, how can I compliantly get my credentials and get going? So, absolutely. So, what is the best way then? You've sort of alluded to it there, making it frictionless. How do you balance that? It's the ultimate balance in this industry around security and convenience. What is it that's so important to deliver there?
Yeah, I've heard people say, gosh, I feel like I'm putting security in, but I'm risking the convenience part, and they can never, play in harmony. And
Mm,
for us, we want to bridge that gap. We want the higher level of security, but we want to make it super convenient where, Paul's not reaching for that badge. Like, shoot, I lost my badge. Now I can't get into the, lab or wherever today. So with us, your face becomes that credential. So it's something that you always have with you. Back to the dining, I'm not going to loan my face to Paul, right, to get a free lunch. So
yeah.
I think there's lots of things when you think about that balance, convenience of not having to carry something. Well, on the administrative side, there's the convenience of, all right, when I issue an enrollment, it's done. I'm not worried about replacing cards, right? So you help kind of leapfrog over those age-old challenges around lost cards, copy cards, and shared cards. But we're also bringing that high level of security with it as well.
Yeah, and look, and behind the scenes, making sure that the access they have is in alignment with the courses they're enrolled in, the dorms that they're supposed to get to, there's all of these aspects. And then you layer in what Paul mentioned before around, is it top secret? Is it, are they a PhD student working on something for the government or whatever it is? And how do you layer that in as well? I mean, some of those PhD students are also great athletes. So you're mixing all of those things
Yep.
together. Yeah.
And
So
Darren,
really,
that's where I think the combination of our solutions with Right Crowd specifically can help navigate all of those things, right? And be the spider into the access control to deliver that access journey.
yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And really, when you think about the universities, and Paul mentioned before, 499 or 49 acres or whatever that was before, a ginormous place. And you've got a lot of, America's got a lot of very old universities. How do you deal around, older buildings and multiple entrances, you got, and the sprawled campuses and joining new campuses? How do you get around a lot of those challenges? Because it's, you're putting in new technology. How do you do it?
For us, we wanted to build a solution that we knew was agnostic. And what we mean by that is we want to make sure it plugs right into the existing backend systems. So something that works on industry standards. We don't rely on a lot of complex software integrations that sometimes can break, right? And then you're doing the finger pointing thing. So we wanted to make sure we could develop something that easily bolted into the existing infrastructure, the cabling, so that you can add that in to augment and ultimately bring enhancements to what you've already got. We've even gone to the extent to ensure that we can bolt this on with Wi-Fi connectivity. So if you've got challenges of running pipe and getting network drops to some of these hard to get locations, then why not make this easily accessible via Wi-Fi? So
Yeah, look, the University of Queensland has 100-and-something-year-old buildings with limestone walls, and they're not going to let you run pipe around. It's heritage listed. There's things in there that you just can't do. So yeah, these are great solutions for these types of challenges. Paul, so you had something to add there, Paul. Sorry, we cut you off.
About some of the clients I've had, and without really having automated systems to manage access. So we talked about the turnover. So you have 25% of your folks leaving, then you have to onboard another 25%, right?
Mhm.
So that turnover. And when you have, so this was a graduate school, so they had graduate students going from graduate year 1 to graduate year 2, and they literally had to reprogram every student badge. There was
Yeah.
no rules engine that said when you're at this, department code or job number, you get
Yeah.
this access.
Yeah.
They had a great system for employee onboarding and offboarding. So
Mhm.
through their IT, they had this really nice system where if I terminate an employee within seconds, it's out of the access control system. But they never connected to students. So it was one of those things where you look at, you say, you have a really great process for your employees, really bad process for your
Yeah.
students. And that's really where you have most of the turnover. So,
Exactly.
those those management systems are key. I mean, those rules engines, setting them up, the rules
Mhm.
engines, that's where you have to invest your time and energy. But once you
Mhm.
set up those rules, it's going to manage itself, and it removes a whole human error potential.
Yeah, and a large set of humans that would do it otherwise. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
yeah, crazy. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting, 25% come in and 25% go out. The other 50%, like you say, they're going from year 1 to year 2. They're deciding, "Oh, I don't really want to do astrophysics because it's a bit hard. I'm going to do computer science." They're all like, no, it's so fluid. Everybody's changing. Like, there's probably in the minority the people who haven't changed in particular.
But you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly my experience from back in the day, and now with my kids as well, same sort of thing. So let's talk a little bit about, thinking about what we just started alluding to, really the campus access from both the staff and the students' perspectives. They're obviously different experiences, and as you said, they can have a really good system around, you know, the employee management system and HR system, whatever that flows into physical security or whatever it is, but they haven't covered it on the student side, and you see it the other way around as well. We see that type of experience. So if we think about students in particular, but staff as well, Jason, I'll start with you, but Paul, I'll get you to add some comments. When you think about the age-old problem of lost credentials, and think about it now, just in the campus does have physical credential, not so much biometrics yet. What really do when you talk to the card services groups, what are their experiences dealing with the time it takes and the bandwidth to deal with those lost credentials? Exactly.
It's wild when you see some of the teams
Yeah.
and the number of people that are dedicated for the sole purpose. I always kind of laugh and joke. I get responses like they treat these things like hotel keys, right? So it's just this constant churn where they're just constantly replacing badges, and there's obviously the cost behind that from a
Mhm.
just a materials perspective. But gosh, it's literally a full time job, so it's a big time suck for sure. I think a lot of universities are coming to that realization that, gosh, the cards just they were certainly a big part of that, the whole timetable of physical keys to
Mhm.
cards, to where they're ready to look at new technology, to know that once a digital credential, let's call it, right, it is built, that it can't be lost, and that's where the power of biometrics, and for us, face specifically, comes into play.
Yeah. Paul, did you have more comments on that as well? You must talk to a lot of these card services groups.
This tells me something when there's 5 FTEs in the access control department for a campus, because it
Mhm.
just tells me everything's being done manual.
Mhm.
And that's when we start to have those conversations about, okay, what systems touch each other. All
Yeah.
right. So it's access control, then it's the the cafeteria, it's the library, getting a book, it's reserving this equipment, it's paying for stuff identify what you have first.
Mhm.
And then start looking at those data tables that are in common, and start creating a roadmap for how you're going to automate that. Once I have that conversation, it starts to, I can see the wheels turning, and with the directors of public safety, because they're like, well, I can redeploy the 3 officers that are sitting in this room providing access. I can put them in the patrol division. I can put them
Yeah.
in the hospital. Yes, we can, all this stuff can be automated for you. You'll be much more efficient. You'll be able to delete access like that. You'll be able to grant access based on whatever rules you set up. And it's so much more efficient. But ultimately, it's providing a safer and more secure environment.
Correct. And look, it's not from a previous deployment we did many years ago, and it wasn't education, but it was 250,000 people campuses, or a campus that they had it. They had 14 FTEs on a Monday morning waiting for lost badges to come in, so they go into the physical security system, give them a temporary badge, and move it across. We reduced that to one because we could automate the processes around it, so they could self-serve for a temporary badge, things like that. Like, just make it easier for people to do what they do. But Jason, obviously, with the facial authentication, it takes it to another level because you virtually can't lose your face. I mean,
Yeah.
it's what you are.
Yep. Yep. You can't loan it to your buddy either.
No, no, it's a challenging. Yeah. So, Paul, and you started to delve into it a little bit, but what are the things that you're seeing, university, higher education campuses really doing around technology and around cameras, say, mass notifications and things like that, that really augment this as well? What are campuses doing to help their students and staff with a better experience and safer experience, particularly, obviously, with the devastating incidents that occur on campuses here in North America?
Their mission is to keep that campus safe and secure, and support the mission of the organization. So technology is a huge part of that. I mean, it's a force multiplier. So if you're deploying cameras with analytics that could provide an alert, if, God forbid, there's a weapon displayed, or there's somebody who's piggybacking, um, mass notification systems, and how do you communicate to the populace? How do you get the word out if you're in lockdown? So it's access, it's cameras, it's those mass notifications. A lot of universities, and I thought this was an interesting conversation, we see these panic buttons or duress buttons all over campuses, the blue towers. And a lot of organizations, a lot of facilities are reevaluating them because the technology is changing. Do we need to deploy them anymore? Can we just use a cell phone and provide our students with an app that they could, summon some help? So everybody's looking for, how do you maximize the technology that's available today? And then how do you kind of future proof it for the next 5 years? How are you ready for what's coming? So again, it starts really with that assessment, determining what you have. How is it working? Is it interoperable? Is it interfaced? Are they working together, or do you have all these siloed systems? I think, everybody wants the best and the latest, greatest technology. And that's a great thing, but you have to make sure that it's fitting together in a cohesive, comprehensive security program. And what I tend to see when I do assessments is that things are very siloed still. And the other thing too, that is very unique to universities, I haven't found a university that's not like this yet, where you have certain schools, say it's the School of Science or the engineering school, they have their own budgets.
Yeah.
So if they want security, they're going to pay for security in that building. So you have different levels of security based on funding. So, I make a joke, but it's the truth. I went to a prep school, and the really, really exclusive prep school, and the most security was in their gym. There was literally the equipment from an NFL team that they bought, put in this prep school, and that was the highest level of security was in that sports center there. So I think that's another unique thing to universities, is how things are funded. They may not be looked at across the university; they may be looked at individual schools. So you can have a school that puts this, XYZ system in it, and this school put the ABC system in. So you also have like this disparities. I really think that's where, having an overall assessment done and then coming up with a playbook for standardizing things really help organizations move forward.
We know from experience, they're not going to have multiple student systems. They're going to have a student system for all the students. Doesn't matter how many schools they have. They don't have separate student systems for the schools. I mean, at the end of the day, that has to devolve down. But if they've all got their own security profiles and postures and everything else, it gets really hard to make it consistent and convenient and secure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Darren, can I touch on something? Because Paul said it brilliantly, and we get this feedback a lot with our solution once deployed, in that they recognize I'm not just doing face authentication. I've got analytics to detect tailgating, so we're checking 2 boxes now. I'm a camera on the edge, so whatever we see, we make available so you see. So you think forensically, hey, something happened, now they can go back and see that pre-post video. So now we're a camera, we're checking another box, right? And then the last piece is on the back end of the notification, the alerts, we're also a built-in speaker mic. So now you've got that audio component. So it looking at technology that can help you through that whole journey is super powerful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned tailgating, but also, I mean, it's impossible anti-pass back. You can't pass your face back through the turnstile and give it to somebody else. So I mean, it's another checkbox as well, and we see that one all the time with badges. So no, absolutely. So if we talk about what we really started to talk about at the outset, which was zero trust on a campus, how do you take the philosophy of zero trust, which, from a IT world, zero trust is no one has access to any system until they need it, and they're in a position to have that access. And we're on more commercial and corporate type campuses, that is the thing that we're bringing into the physical access environment. But how do you bring that to the physical security realm in a university from your perspective?
So for us, we realize a campus environment, you want it to feel warm, trusting, open, right? But you still want to make sure that everybody's safe. We actually have a slide in one of our presentations. It's like having a guard at every door. So think of a solution where we're always monitoring, right? We're always authenticating. We're always making sure identity of people who are gaining access into these spaces. And then we're also alerting, you mentioned tailgating. We're also alerting if we detect folks that are maybe going into areas where they shouldn't. So, and we're doing this in a super passive way, right? With little interaction. And that interaction with face is the piece that really rings true. Historically, a lot of biometrics need interaction, right? You would have to put your finger on something or swipe your hand, and with
Yeah.
face, it's happening in that passive environment, but we're always authenticating. So again, bridging that gap between security and convenience.
And Paul, I'll probably bring you under that question as well, because you deal with seeing the systems these organisations use. There are reasons that obviously you have holidays where you don't want people, people are away on summer break or whatever. You don't want them accessing the campus in that period, so you want to flick all that access off and then turn it back on with the right access afterwards. Where you've got, you talked about cafeterias, you talked about libraries. There's all kinds of reasons why people change courses, therefore they shouldn't have that access anymore. These campuses really need to automate to ensure that when they do get to these doors and they're authenticating, as Jason said, that the reality is they're getting in where they should and not where they shouldn't.
I find that security is not even part of those conversations at times.
Yeah.
It's being driven by others. So, from a trust perspective, we always use the term, need to access only, right? So from a security perspective, security needs to be part of that discussion, obviously, and help to set up the governing structure and the rules for access for everybody involved in the campus. And you mentioned the summertime. So the seasons, it changes. Time of day could change, day of week it could change, and so forth. So it's well worth the time invested to map out the automation and to automate these systems so that it eliminates all of those potential issues. If it's a student or if it's an employee and we want to revoke their access, that should not take days. It should not take a work order. It should not take an act of God. It should be pushing a button. And that's what we expect today. And the beauty of it is it's easily accomplished.
Yeah. Yes, no, agreed. And look, it's really interesting that on the way in, when your student's enrolled, particularly a student here, they want convenience. They want it to be seamless, that I'm in, I'll pick on physics again, so I have access to the lab, physics lab and whatever else. They want that convenience so they can get in when they need to. But then on the flip side of that is when they change to another course or leave the university, drop out, whatever the decision, or finish their course, getting them out of the system, it's always an afterthought. It's always like they never get to it. You get people who still have access a year later when they shouldn't have that access. So on the in, it's convenience, and on the out, it's security, making sure, the convenience disappears at that point. You want to make sure they're out of the system. Yeah. All right. So, Jason, I just want to drill in on, sorry if I interrupted there, but I just want to drill in on one thing that, comes up all the time in conversations, and I know you guys have great answers around it. When you deploy a biometric solution like Alcatraz, what is it about, what is it that people can be sort of rest assured around the user's privacy around that process?
You're right, Darren. It does come up. We've got fantastic guides and talking points on this, but it's interesting. In a higher ed environment, we're dealing with folks that are probably using their face every day to unlock their phone, right? And think about what's in our phones. Oh my goodness, bank accounts, plane tickets, everything. So I think people are generally over the hump, but the question still comes up. And for us, it's an education thing. And we have to start with delineating ourselves from where face technology tends to get a little bit more scrutiny, and that's over here in recognition, which we aren't.
Yeah.
Recognition, I think, has a space, right? That's where maybe you're looking for persons of interest and potentially comparing it to other databases. That's recognition. We are not that at all. So it's the education around we're face authentication. We're authenticating somebody that's opting in, right? They're opting in to use their face. We're careful about what we're capturing around that process. We're never capturing, we don't know people's names. We don't know anything about you. We're
No.
building a binary map, right? So
Mhm.
it's really an education and helping people understand that, and that we're not doing anything with the data other than
Yeah,
authenticating
and I
your face.
no, and look, I can vouch for that as an organization that integrates with Alcatraz. We give you the ID from the database of that person. That's unidentifiable, like it's a GUID or whatever it is. And then we
Yep.
and that's what we give you. And we give you an unidentifiable, like untraceable card number. Bingo. Like it's untraceable. So we're not giving you any data that's, personal PII data or anything like that. And then
Yep.
you're building up this template that is irreversible and unique to that person and everything else. And there is no recognition. It's authentication of
Yep.
that identity.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I mean, that's from dealing with it at an API level. I see it firsthand. That's what literally is going on. So, I mean, I'm giving you like inside to the listeners, really the inside information. That's what actually happens in the complexities of it all.
Yep.
Paul, I'll jump a little bit here around the zero trust conversation. In your experience, and I'm sure everyone loves to hear these stories, but what is one piece of technology in your time that you've been dealing with campuses, 35 years, what hasn't lived up to the hype? What is it that you've seen?
I would actually say the mobile credential. I really thought that was going to be something that was going to be embraced when it first came out. Utilizing your smartphone or your watch or and so forth. But it really don't see that because I think everybody has the same concerns that I have, and that's that I can pass my phone to you, I could pass my watch to you, I can pass things like that. So I don't really, it really hasn't penetrated the market the way I thought it would, and I'm okay with that. But there are some really significant game changers, right? With everything, with automation now, with analytics, with artificial intelligence. That's the space where security, public safety managers are really going to be spending a lot of time researching solutions out there, really looking to make their teams more efficient, more effective, improve response time. So I'm excited about with the technology that's available today, and even more excited about what's going to happen in the future. But some things come out with a lot of um, a lot of energy, and you're thinking that this thing's really going to be adapted or adopted as much as you thought. But I really haven't seen the mobile credentials yet be adopted as much as I thought it would, um,
Yeah.
because the concerns people still have with that.
What are the things that you're seeing campuses really honing in on right now around the key topics around, their security and safety? What are the things technology-wise you're really seeing?
Really, the boards of the universities that are really driving, looking at doing things different because the world has changed, and certainly the more incidents are occurring on campus. So
Mhm.
there's a recognition at every university I've visited that things need to change.
Mhm.
There's the constant conversation about how do we keep it open, accessible, friendly, at the same time securing it and keeping our campus population safe and secure. So again, I think it's the leaders are looking for solutions that will make things easier, automated, and really eliminate as much risk as they can, and eliminate as much human error as possible. You
Yeah.
always need a human in the loop, and we need to be involved in things and kind of setting the rules and the parameters. But everybody's looking for easier ways to create safer campuses, and
Mhm.
really, and see a return on the investment, and how you measure that. Is that in a reduction in incidents or an improvement in response time, or is it just by asking the students, do you feel safer?
Yeah.
So, there's a recognition today that didn't exist 20 years ago in universities, that we have to do things different. We can't be as open and as we were in years past. We
Mhm.
need to have a higher level of security because unfortunately things are foreseeable today, and enough events have occurred at organizations that put us all on notice that it could be any university could experience some of these active assailant incidents or a swatting incident or suicide, whatever it may be. Universities
Yeah.
are experiencing this. Unfortunately, they're experiencing it at a pretty high rate.
Yeah, look, even as I said in the opening story around the campus in Australia, even there they've recognised that when we don't have the active shooter type of situation in Australia to any degree, really. But there's still, obviously dangerous people on campus. There's still security issues that need to be locked out. And as I said, I could not get into my physics labs anymore. I could not get into the things that I used to just wander into back in the 80s, and I couldn't do that anymore. So it's even there, it's changed. But so yeah, it's a global phenomenon from higher education perspective. So you mentioned incidents. What are the, and I'll ask both of you this question really, but what are the key controls you're seeing that are being put in place in the event of emergencies for when, say, the admin or the emergency responders turn up and they need access that's completely different to other users? They need unfettered access for certain situations.
I guess I'll give my response first, and Paul, I'm sure you'll have some good things to share as well. From my perspective, a first responder, they need to see what's going on, right? So the first question is, how do I gain access to the video piece? So from our side, having video at the door, we're giving people a great vantage point when whoever came through that opening, right? And then you can run analytics on that as well. So it's that combination of the video, the shot you're getting, and the analytics that can be ran on it. The other piece is, and I mentioned this before, with a solution and technology that is kind of two ways. So we can see what's going on, but if you need to be able to speak out and make an audible alert, you want technology that has that capability as well. And Darren, we even built in, it's a newer tool. We call it Adaptive 2FA. So most people, and say it's one of those critical labs, most people will need to get in with face and card.
Yep.
Emergency response folks, admin, they can actually get in with just their face. So we're adaptive based on like the situation and who might need to respond. So those are some things that we've done.
No, that's very cool. Yeah, I haven't seen that before, so that's interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Paul, you had something to add there as well. Sorry, we cut you off.
The first responders have to be part of the conversation. Whenever public safety departments looking to implement new technology, public safety or the first responders should be part of that conversation. And to make sure that the first responders can, just say if the facility's on lockdown, well, we want the first responders to be able to get through that door. So we need to make sure that they have override access if it's their face or the credential is, gives them the ability to override that lockdown. So, there's things that universities can do quite easily to help first responders, things like labeling their outside doors, putting numbers on their outside doors so that they can say to the first responders, we're in building A by door 5. I mean, those are easy things that universities could do. But when it comes to the technology, we just need to make sure that the good guys can come in when we need the good guys to come in.
Yeah, without any compromising in a normal situation. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, what can campuses do? What are you seeing that the best in breed are doing as well? What's moving from, being a reactive situation, which is obviously always the security profile, if you want, trying to get to more of a proactive situation. So, Paul, how do you what is, and you mentioned this at the outset actually, but really delving into it a little more, how does a university best ensure, what do you see as the best ways that universities are ensuring that what they're investing in today, and you talked about it, it'll still be good in 5 years' time, like what are the best strategies you're seeing for really, it's a difficult situation. How do you know what is going to be there in 5 years, but what are the best things you're seeing?
Getting an inventory of all of the different video management systems you may have, or access control systems you may have, or emergency communications, getting a good inventory of that, and then really creating a playbook for driving to standardization and then to driving to that automation. So I think it starts with the assessment and then coming up with the playbook. But it's also making sure that the right folks are in the conversation. So the folks from IT have to be part of that conversation. And you have to, like most organizations, want a path to the cloud. So you may not want it today, but you want it in 5 years. You want to get that off of your network. You want to put it in the cloud. looking at things like open architecture. If it's not open architecture, I would be looking at someplace else. If it's not
Right.
interoperable and I can't kind of migrate backwards and forwards, it's not most likely a system for a large campus because those standardizations are rolling out one, say if it's a VMS system or an access control, that's going to take time.
Yeah.
So you really need to have that interim, come up with a way to look at your current systems today with one pane of glass. We'll look at
Yeah.
it all together, tie it together to give you that roadmap. So you can then kind of follow your roadmap to standardization going forward.
And this is just honestly, this question pops into my mind as we talk through this. The the athletics department who has all the money and everything else, how do you broker the conversations internally so that they give some money to the School of Philosophy who's got the least budget? I don't pick on philosophy in particular, but the older style courses which maybe don't get as much focus and money and everything else. How do you broker that conversation? What are campuses doing to make that happen?
And it starts with the senior leaders. It starts with the board.
Yeah.
It starts with if it's the board, if it's the cabinet, or it's the board, whoever it may be. It's getting them to understand that it's all, no matter what bucket of money it is, it's all in the same bucket. It's all one, it's all the same money. And then saying to them, listen, we realize that there's risk. There's different risk at each of the campuses, or there's different risk at each of the buildings, whatever it may be. We need to spend our money wisely as a university to deal with the highest risk. So it's not an easy conversation, but it's easier if you pull those resources together and have security or a council or a team that determines where the money is going to be spent to deal with the greatest risk in the university. Not, we've heard this term used several times before. It's the pay to play. Well, if I'm
Mhm.
the School of Medicine and I have money, I'm spending it on a security system.
Mm.
And it may be already a great system in place, but because I have the money, I can do that.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult conversation, but it's one that
Yeah.
needs to happen.
Absolutely. Sorry, Jason, did you have anything to add there?
I did. Our whole kind of go to market strategy, Darren, is we want to make sure universities aren't installing our solution and it's obsolete in 5 years or 6 years. So we've actually built our model around this whole, SaaS, and Paul mentioned it with the cloud option, but
Yeah.
it's a solution as a service. So you can literally budget annually what it's going to cost, but we make sure you're always up to date. We're pushing the firmware. We're patching the solutions. There's redundancies built in inherently with the cloud model, but we actually take it to the next step to say, all right, after 5 years, you're still fully committed to Alcatraz. We're going to give you a technology refresh, so you're not stuck with the old model. It's a model where we make sure you've always got the latest and greatest.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's something to be,
really
yeah,
aware of. And I'd add two things on the facial authentication side as well. And heaven forbid I was still a student. But if I pulled up my student card now and you looked at my photo, the facial authentication system would have kittens and wouldn't let me in. But yours also adapts on the face as you change it. If I was at campus for 25, 30, it's more than that now, but those number of years, I definitely look different today to what I did then. And you guys deal with that. That's a really interesting feature. Do you want to tell us a little bit
yeah,
about it?
it's a differentiating feature for us as well, because most Darren in the face space, they match back to that constant. And to your point, if that constant's a picture that's 20 years old, well, why are we starting on a shaky foundation? So
Yeah.
literally every time we see you and authenticate you, we're making those subtle adjustments. So if I were to grow out my beard or start wearing glasses, we now know you with a beard and with glasses. So yeah, we continuously evolve just in how we're matching too. So
Yeah.
yeah, great point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it actually goes back. I had a massive bicycling accident, or whatever you call it here in the US. Accident was back in those days. I got a really big scar. It's gone now, pretty much, but at the time, it was a big disfigurement on my
Mm,
face, and I'm sure it would have had an impact if facial authentication was a technology that existed back then. You know, but you would have adapted with that and dealt with that kind of situation. So
yeah.
that's another thing around future proofing. And I'll tell you right now, we've been in this for 21 years in the physical security world, that the facial, and you know this because Alcatraz has been around for quite some time, but it's taken time for it to really build momentum around facial authentication. But it has definitely, we're seeing it in the commercial world and higher education as well. It's definitely a technology that is getting it, and I'm not trying to advertise you in particular here. I'm advertising facial authentication because we're trying to be agnostic on the webinar to some degree. But at the end of the day, it is a technology that is future proof because it is new anyway. I mean, and a lot of people are just starting to adopt it. So it's a good outcome.
No, I appreciate you saying that. And for even me personally, you mentioned at the very front end, I used to sell and I was very loyal to a different biometric, but I've evolved as well. And I
Yeah.
agree. Face is it's just simple. It can learn. It's fast. So yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah. And the privacy issues, as we talked about before, they're not an issue. Like it's all of those things are off the table. So
Yeah.
Paul, back to you. If you give one piece of advice to a campus security leader, what would it be? What would be the one piece of advice you'd start with, and to really get their process moved, significantly, improvement?
Only get better if you understand where you're at,
Yeah,
and then create a plan to improve. So, if universities have not had somebody come in from the outside in the last 3 to 5 years, invite somebody out, a qualified expert to come out and evaluate your program. If it's just evaluating your systems, or if it's evaluating your department, or if it's evaluating your operations, but have somebody come out and do an evaluation for it, because the goal is to improve. And
yeah,
again, if it gives you that baseline, okay, this is where we're at today, this is where we want to get, and then you can kind of create that playbook or roadmap to get there. But I think that's where I would start.
yeah.
I would really start with an assessment to really get a good picture of where your strengths are and where your opportunities for improvement are.
And don't just, I mean, you've said it a few times on the call, and I agree. You need to assess and understand and realize what you have in your environment, because as you say, a lot of it just grows osmotically, and they probably don't even realize what this school did and what that one did and where it is. And we certainly see that in our campus deployments. It's the same thing. They don't know in the School of Engineering what they did over here, and that they have special rules there, and that that now there's a policy in the dorms, and this surprised me, to be honest, that in the dorms, this did not happen in my day. The 8 people who live in that dorm, they all have to agree to have a visitor. They all have to agree. Like it's an approval required by 7 other people to get a visitor into their dorm. Now, that was unheard of in the 80s. I can tell you right now, it was more the opposite, where 8 people would all invite 8 people. So it would be just craziness. But this has all changed, and we've all had to evolve to that. But if they don't understand all of these things that are occurring and all the technologies they have and everything else, they can't go anywhere. And there's no point just throwing some money at a quick solution that you think is going to help in this area and that area, because you're only going to fragment things even more. So certainly, definitely agree with your advice there. And do you have, and you don't have to name names, but do you have a shining example of where you've seen innovative, technology deployed to really drive excellence at a particular campus or location? As I said, you don't have to name names, but what have you seen that's been really, wow, that's fantastic?
Coast that comes to mind, that really prides themselves on being incredibly innovative, and they are. And I think I may have shared this story with you before, but they deployed the facial recognition at their female dorms, their graduate dorms, and have had nothing but success with that deployment. And now they're thinking about, well, now they are planning for the deployment throughout the rest of the campus. But one of the things that this university does, and I really encourage all university leaders to do this, is join associations of like-minded people,
Yeah.
and then reach out to your peers and say, what are you doing? Have you looked at this solution? Have you looked at that solution? And even if an organization is struggling financially, just say a university doesn't have money to bring in an outside consultant, call the director of public safety from the school down the road. Have him or her evaluate your campus, and vice versa. But you really have to start somewhere. But yeah, the organizations that reach out, that do their homework, that reach out to their peers and belong to professional associations where leading practices are shared. They tend to have the more mature, robust public safety programs.
Yeah, and 2 points on that. I want to remember one to come back to, but 2 points in particular. One, in Australia, we have an organisation called TSUG, which is I don't forget what it all stands for, but I think it's tertiary education, which is what we call it there, user group or something like that. But it's literally all of the university campuses in Australia, of which is nowhere near the number you have in the US, but they all come together and they share. There's not competitiveness. There's a great sharing of, what technologies and what approaches and what things they're doing. And they get a huge amount out of that. One of the customers we had in Australia around that, he was the chairman of that, and he shared some fantastic stories with me. I mean, these are old stories now, so I won't regale you with them, but he had some fantastic outcomes from those conversations. So, yeah, no, I definitely agree. It's to everyone on the call, on the webinar, I'm sure you guys do this kind of thing anyway, but, there's a lot to be gained from that collaboration and user sharing. And and I was going to say as well that women's dorm or whatever it was that you were talking about before, where they're doing facial authentication, what specifically was the fantastic outcome from their perspective, if you can share any of that data?
Was really, so they were smart. So they measured student perception of safety before deployment and then after
Ah,
deployment.
yeah.
So they got to actually see measurable data.
Hmm.
And even so as part of our assessment, we always say, do you feel safe here? That's important, right? We
Yeah.
can have all this security equipment, all this cool stuff, and the staff or the students don't feel safe. It's not enough. So they were able to measure that with the survey, but I think it was really the ease of it for the students. And again, I don't have to fumble, I don't have to grab anything. I walk right through, I show my face, I continue to go. It also stopped, and you mentioned this earlier, and this was the other thing that came to mind. It actually stopped a lot of the unwanted guests from coming in
Yes. Yes.
to the facility, especially on the weekends. And
Yeah.
so it gave them a higher level of security.
Excellent. Yeah, they're great comments. I appreciate it. Jason, do you have anything final to add there as well? We're just about to wrap the webinar up, but
No, but I guess I will comment that, Paul said this, that after they saw success here, it grew and we see that as well. And we want people to see it, experience it, because that's really where the rubber hits the road. And then we do see these things just kind of snowball. So
yeah. No, fantastic. Look, Jason and Paul, I really appreciate your commentary and expertise and bringing that to the table for the group here today. We've really, the key messages out of today is that, we're measuring security and convenience. We're obviously, security is just building and building and building, but we have to keep that level of convenience while driving safety as well. The important thing as well, zero trust on a campus is actually an achievable goal. We can get to that point through automation, through, making it more convenient for people through facial authentication and other techniques to achieve that. And it's not just campus tradition or culture that we're dealing with here. It's all those people coming in and out, the revolving door, all the things we've talked about. And proactive security policies really driven by safety can be brought to the table and successfully delivered. So I think that's what we really wanted to share with everyone today. So for everyone on the call, on the webinar, I appreciate you listening in. We appreciate it. And Jason, Paul, thank you.
thank you very much.